Mock Draft Monday is back. You guys know what to do. Hit that like button. Also subscribe. We're going to be changing up a little bit here in this mock draft with a bunch of different selections, a bunch of new players introduced into round one here. Really excited for this. Again, if you guys are new to the channel, hit that like button. Also subscribe. A ton of work goes in off the camera here for you guys so that we can bring in this high quality content. Let's jump into it, Austin, here. First overall, your Jacksonville Jaguars, a team, even though you're a fan of, you're not very high on their outlook, their future, and some of the moves that they have made. Of course, this offseason a little bit better than last, I think, in your opinion. Talk about Kayvon Thibodeaux here. You have him going first overall. Do you trust the Jaguars to get it right here?
Oh, no, I really don't. I honestly think it's going to be brutal however this draft pans out. Because there's a lot of moves that Trent Baalke's made that has really, made me shake my head. This offseason was the latest example. They've gotten better, but, like the Zay Jones signing, obviously Christian Kirk's money was huge. There's a lot of questionable decisions made within this organization. A lot of structural issues with the team, ownership. It's really, as a whole, this is probably the worst ran organization, even though I am a fan of them. So people in Jacksonville, I'm sorry, but it's just the truth, and it's been the truth. However, hopefully this is the draft that it turns around. Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to be a big time pickup for this Jacksonville defense. Obviously, I think we have a really, really good chance of, coming out of the cellar this year. I'm not going to hold my breath though, because I don't want to be disappointed for like the fourth year in a row.
It's interesting here. Again, I kind of have Austin caught in a catch-22 here where we talk about interior defensive lineman Foley Fatukasi. I don't think inherently Austin would have liked that 3-year, $30 million contract, but he did come from my New York Jets, who he tends to usually hype up and say are way better than they actually are. So it's an interesting situation there. We do have Kayvon Thibodeaux going first overall to Jacksonville. Pick 2, we got the Detroit Lions, a team that, a year ago, we probably would have raked on them at this point, saying how bad this franchise is run as well. However, things have really changed around. I think Dan Campbell's actually doing a pretty good job there. And even though Matt Stafford went on to win a Super Bowl, you have to look at their perspective here. They've kind of reset their franchise, and that trade is huge for them, having 2 first-round picks this year. And they keep it with the Ann Arbor kid here from the Michigan Wolverines, Aidan Hutchinson, staying in-state here now with the Detroit Lions. Do you like this move for Detroit? And then what's the reasoning with Hutchinson?
Yeah, I mean, he's a big high motor guy, extremely productive in his final season at Michigan. And when you look at the Detroit Lions, they definitely got to generate a little more pass rush. At best, it's been pedestrian the last couple of seasons. So looking at Aidan Hutchinson, I think he's a huge addition to this front seven. They're going to continue to get better up front. This is a tough physical football team. He fits the profile. I love the fit between the two. I think it's going to be awesome. Dan Campbell and this team hopefully can make a couple of strides. Once again, I think they're going to be better next year for sure. They got some assets to do it. They've made a couple of moves. I love where the Detroit Lions are heading. And honestly, I think they have the infrastructure to actually build something long term.
Very interesting here. You had Kayvon Thibodeaux go 1, Aidan Hutchinson go 2. Out of those 2 edges, Austin, if you were the actual GM, first overall, which one would you take?
That's a really tough question because it depends on where my franchise is at. Generally, when you are picking first, though, you have a long way to go. I would possibly opt for Thibodeaux just because of his overall upside. I think he offers a little higher of a ceiling in terms of athleticism, explosiveness. But Aidan Hutchinson is so tough. He's a very, very great edge. It's hard to pick between the two, but I think Thibodeaux has a slightly higher upside. Definitely
shows how strong this class is. Moving into 3, the Houston Texans, a team that's really reset itself as well. I talked about that with the Matt Stafford trade and how huge that was for the Detroit Lions. And I think the Texans here can be categorized in the same regard here with moving on from Deshaun Watson, a player who is never going to play for them again, to get 3 first-round picks in a deal from the Cleveland Browns, and they gave him all that guaranteed money. So I think now the Texans are in a pretty good spot. They have picks 3 and 13 here. You started off with Ikem Ekwonu from NC State. He's the first tackle off the board in this mock draft. What was your reasoning with going tackle here for Houston? And then also, why'd you go with Ekwonu over Neal?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ekwonu is really going to fit what the Texans need to start developing, and that's identity in the run game. It's really important for them moving forward to start establishing a run game, especially for Davis Mills, because you want to get him some nice play action, easy completions. It's good for a young quarterback. That's why I opted to go with Ekwonu here. And just the overall tackle selection, part of the product of, building from ground up, basically. this team needs a lot. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They definitely do. The Texans obviously have quite a bit of assets now from the Deshaun Watson trade. You can kind of get a little creative with it. That's something they needed to do. And now they hit the reset button. This team very likely is going to be, once again, near the cellar next season. However, a lot of assets to build for the long-term future. I mean, hopefully Lovie Smith can get the most out of his guys this year. However, I just don't see it being a super big-time year for them.
Yeah, I think so as well. We do have a loose power rankings up on the channel as well. Make sure you guys go check that out after this mock draft. Pick 4, my New York Jets here. And safety Kyle Hamilton's the selection here out of Notre Dame. And Jets fans, I read your comments already. Okay, I can see you guys typing in the chat. Stop. Okay, Jets fans, stop complaining about picking really good defensive players. We rank 32nd in the NFL defensively. So right now, if you're typing a hate comment about how Kyle Hamilton shouldn't be the pick, you probably didn't watch this team that much last season. We were brutal, couldn't stop anybody. I mean, did you see Jonathan Taylor carve us up for 200 yards? Like, let's not act like we don't need to make a big splash here on defense. I know some people are going to be screaming for another offensive lineman or a wide receiver. That's potentially something that you could look at 10 or 35 and 38. What makes Kyle Hamilton so special here at 4?
Super rangy safety, guy that can play in the box. He's the total package at that safety position. And this is the best safety I've seen ever since we've started doing this kind of stuff. Honestly, just because he brings so much to the table athletically, a really, really good tackler in open field, which is incredibly important, especially for the New York Jets. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I wouldn't take a safety at 4. Well, sometimes when you have potentially the best player available, you just have to do it. If you're talent deficient, you need talent. I think that's a simple formula, and hopefully one that people are following right now, because Kyle Hamilton in that secondary is going to be huge. They've already got some nice pieces back there. Hopefully they can add on to it. He is going to be a star in this league, and if you want a star, he's sitting there at 4, so why not take him?
I love the Kyle Hamilton acquisition here. The Jets badly need help on the defensive side of the ball. It'll be interesting to watch because Joe Douglas has had 3 first-round picks so far in his tenure with the New York Jets and has drafted all 3 offensive players. So we'll see if he does go defense with the 4th overall selection. Pick 5, the New York Giants. I think Giants fans probably going to be happy here in a team that, quite frankly, had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL last year. Go out and get way better here with Evan Neal. How important do you think he'll be for Brian Daboll, that new offense that they're going to implement there? And then do you see Daniel Jones still being the long-term guy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Is Daniel Jones a long-term guy? I don't think so, just because it's not the same regime that drafted him. They really don't owe him anything. They don't have anything tied to him. Long-term, I don't think he's going to be their quarterback. They're probably going to move on. Nevertheless, they have some nice infrastructure building. You look along that offensive line, Andrew Thomas, and then you add a guy like Evan Neal into the mix, who's a 6'7" monster, an absolute beast in pass protection. And long-term, he has a potential to be a top 5 tackle in the league. Super exciting for the New York Giants. They're getting an absolute steal here at 5. I love that for this team. And, looking at where they're at now, they want to start building for whoever that next quarterback is. I'm kind of interested to see if they continue the trend of drafting more offensive players, or they're going to focus a little bit more defense, in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds.
It's interesting. I remember a few drafts ago, neither you or myself were very high on a Duke quarterback prospect, and now it seems like the Giants aren't either, moving forward, not picking up that 5th-year option. Pick 6, we got the Carolina Panthers, a team that is seemingly high on a quarterback prospect this year. And that's Kenny Pickett, been pretty consistently mocked here. Austin, is this a case of the Panthers just trying to save face here, probably try and save their job, give themselves a little bit more time in their positions?
Yeah, they're just trying to extend the lease, man. That's all I'm going to say about it, because they don't have that much time left. Matt Rule, I'm sorry, buddy. This is your last hurrah. This is your last chance at really securing your job in the NFL. I don't know if he makes it through this upcoming season, which some fans might be a little torn on that. However, this is just trying to save themselves, and Kenny Pickett being the quarterback, some feel is, potentially the most NFL ready right now. That's the reason we've gone Pickett. We've heard a lot of rumors about potentially them selecting him at 6. So why not stay with the trend on what we're hearing? That's why I have Kenny Pickett going 6. I think it makes a lot of sense from the current management's perspective, trying to save jobs, trying to win as many games as possible, show progress. Obviously, Sam Darnold's not getting the job done. Unfortunately, that was a brutal trade for them. Very sorry, Panthers fans. That was tough to see your organization do that.
candidly, Austin, here now, does Kenny Pickett actually fix the problems in Carolina, or is this just an attempt, not an actual solution?
Oh, this is going to be a Titanic ending, I think. I think you could see Christian McCaffrey traded after they start struggling. You look at Kenny Pickett, he's just probably not going to be that franchise saver. For how many wins they're going to need to hold and save their jobs, I don't think he hits that mark. Unfortunately, I don't think he's that guy.
We'll see if Matt Rule can learn some Spanish, because I think the Panthers are getting ready to say adios to him. Moving on to 7, we got the New York Giants again, and we're going with a really good defensive player, and one that I think there's a little bit of a split opinion on, and that's cornerback Ahmad Gardner. There's the people that have watched him and say he's really good and has really great size, length, and talent, and then there's also the people that just look at his college and say, well, he played at Cincinnati, so I'm not really sure if he played any good competition. Austin, is Ahmad Gardner worth the top 7 pick in this year's draft?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you get a premier corner in the draft, he's absolutely worth selecting this high. And, you know, there's some cautionary tales of taking a corner this high. Now, that shouldn't be an all-encompassing way to draft, because we've seen guys like Jeff Okudah struggle, CJ Henderson, all in these top 10s, Justin Gilbert. You know, there's a lot of examples of these high-ranking corners. D. Milner is another one as well that just haven't worked out. However, that should never deter you from selecting one this high, especially with what you've seen. If you see a player that's worthy of being a top 10 selection, you draft him. That's what the Giants are doing here. They're going to have a really phenomenal corner room moving forward with Bradbury, Jackson, and Ahmad Gardner. Phenomenal trio. And watch out, it's going to be hard throwing the ball on this defense, especially in the division that they play with. A lot of aerial attacks in division. So you might as well be absolutely stacked at a premier position.
Yeah, I like this here a lot for New York. You get a really good cornerback, and it also gives you some flexibility if James Bradbury isn't sticking there long term. I know there's been some trade block rumors for the Giants cornerback, so we'll see if he is in New York. Regardless if he is or isn't, though, I think Ahmad Gardner is a really good pickup here. Number 8, the Atlanta Falcons, and this is a kid I think that you and I have been both blushing over in terms of what he is as an NFL draft prospect. Malik Willis out of Liberty. What do you like about this guy? Should he be considered for a top 3 selection if a team were to move up?
I mean, if you desperately need a quarterback, which I see Atlanta and Carolina being in that position, and Seattle, somebody might have to move up to really go get him, which it's funny, at some point in the year, there's a lot of analysts saying, oh, I don't know if he's even a first round selection. I heard that plenty of times, or late first round. His physicals, like I had predicted, made him pop on these draft boards. And all of a sudden now we're seeing him a lot of times in that top 10, top 15. And it's very possible a team's going to have to trade up, because you got 3 quarterback needy teams bunched together here at the second half of the top 10. And, very well could be, just with how dynamic he is. And, we saw Lamar Jackson work in the league, won an MVP. Malik Willis offers a very similar skill set, not to the degree of Lamar Jackson, however, very similar in a lot of different facets.
Yeah, I like his game a lot. The tape is extremely fun to watch. His pro day and his throwing is insane. I mean, he can air the ball deep. He's got good velocity behind his throws. And of course, those legs work some magic as well, extending plays off of script. I mean, Malik Willis, I really, really like. And I think the team that picks him up in the first round is going to be really happy with the end result. Number 9 here, Seattle, going with Sam Howell from North Carolina, the former Tar Heel quarterback. Of course, starting of the year, we thought probably a top 2 pick in this year's draft. Didn't quite have the season he was hoping to with the Tar Heels this past year, but we still see him in the top 10 here. Is this more of a result of Seattle probably hitting the panic button at quarterback, or what's your thoughts here with Howell going to Seattle at 9?
Yeah, Sam Howell going to Seattle. Obviously, I don't know their confidence level in Drew Lock. Now, part of it makes me wonder, do they believe in Drew Lock? Because they wouldn't have traded for him if they didn't have any belief in him, or, they had plans to take a quarterback. Well, I don't think they would have, added him into the trade, and that would have been, considered an asset, if that makes sense. But I think Sam Howell is probably a very, very nice selection for them. Obviously, going into the year, thought he's a top 2 pick, didn't play as well, didn't have as many weapons around him that he had in the previous season. Therefore, definitely had some struggles, especially I revert back to that Virginia Tech game. Very up and down, multiple interceptions in that one. However, he kind of bounced back nicely second half of the year, was second in the NCAA for quarterbacks in terms of rushing yards. He's a nice dual threat quarterback, and I think Seattle could use that.
Love that here for Seattle, getting the quarterback of the future. We'll see. Maybe it's Drew Lock, maybe it's Sam Howell. Moving on to pick 10, we got the New York Jets here again. They went with Kyle Hamilton, pick 4. Now 10, you have them getting a really intriguing edge here from Florida State. That, of course, is Jermaine Johnson, a player that, has quite a wide range around the first round here. The Jets still badly need edge, though. Even if Carl Lawson comes back and is exactly what they had expected he would be when they signed him coming off of a serious injury, they're still really deprived of a second edge rusher across from him. They tried Shaq Lawson last year, just didn't quite get the job done. Does Jermaine Johnson fill that void?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. I have a lot of confidence in this pick. Jermaine Johnson has been a guy that was considered, middle of the second round, really worked himself into the early teens, and now finds himself at number 10. I know a lot of people like Jermaine Johnson. I do as well. The former JUCO product is phenomenal. Definitely has progressed every year in his collegiate career. He's a sack machine, plays the run very well. It's exactly what you need in a Robert Saleh defense. Two really good edges, and I think that's going to bode well for the Jets moving forward.
I love that. The Jets defense ranked 32nd last year. Hopefully we can get that up closer to 15, maybe 20 at least. That's serious improvement here for the Jets defensively. Now we're on to number 11. We got the Washington Commanders. You got Garrett Wilson here from Ohio State. We're adding another Ohio State Buckeye into that wide receiver room, along with Terry McLaurin. Curtis Samuel's also there. So very talented team already at the wide receiver spot. What's really the MO here for going with Garrett Wilson? And is it just trying to put as much around Carson Wentz as possible?
This is a zero excuse year for Carson Wentz if this pick happens. If they are not super competitive in that NFC East with Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, I'm out on the whole Carson Wentz thing. However, you give him every opportunity to succeed this year. Obviously, I think that Garrett Wilson is going to be one of those receivers that they're like, wow, how did we not see him, potentially being that top guy? Ran a really fast 40. The tape's great. There's a lot to love about him. Obviously, he's not super, super tall. I think he only stands at about 6 foot. However, pretty average for a receiver. He's a big time playmaker for this Washington offense. And you add those two Buckeyes at the wide receiver room. I think it's a dangerous team, especially if Carson Wentz can, really get the ball out on time, on target. Washington is definitely looking like they're in contention.
If you were a GM in the NFL right now, Austin, would Garrett Wilson be a top 10 pick if you owned one?
Yeah, I would. Just from his overall skill set, I definitely would consider him. He's my top receiver this year. There's a lot of really good and talented guys, but to me, he separated himself after rewatching the film. This is an explosive guy, and a lot of those characteristics of the actual true number ones in the NFL, he possesses those, in my opinion.
Love that here for Washington. Moving on to 12 now, we got the Minnesota Vikings, a team that, has been really stung by cornerback play. Historically, look at, their best year back in 2017 when they made a really deep run to the NFC Conference Championship game. You have to highlight Xavier Rhodes' season that year as part of the key reason on why they got there. They just haven't had that production since then. The Vikings have seriously struggled putting good cornerbacks on the field consistently. They tried it with Pat Pete. They've tried a bunch of different first-round cornerbacks. Why is Derek Stingley different?
Derek Stingley is just so talented. His coverage skills are great. You watch how he plays the ball. Very, very talented in that regard. Athleticism is just through the charts. So there's a lot to like about him, but every single time you're going to have the injury concerns and also the inconsistency. That LSU program, after they won the title, was just not the same. Had a lot of issues in that secondary, especially when Derek Stingley was playing. Definitely had some fair share of issues. However, if you look back to probably a little more of what he truly is, I think he is a potential top 5 player in this class. And I think the Minnesota Vikings are getting an absolute steal here at 12.
Massive upside here for the Vikings. We'll see if they are able to execute this pick on draft night, how well it pans out for them. And 13, we got the Texans here again. You're going with another Ohio State Buckeye wide receiver, Chris Olave, who I think he's risen up some boards, especially after he ran fairly well in the 40 at a 4.39. Why do you like Chris Olave here as the second wide receiver off the board?
I like him because it gives the Texans another vertical threat. I think you really want to push the ball down the field with Davis Mills, who has a pretty good arm in his own right. But looking at Chris Olave, takes the top off the defense. A lot of explosive plays came from him, from CJ Stroud this past season. Always was seemingly wide open as well in a lot of those games that you watch. Chris Olave, very talented receiver, gets a little overshadowed by the very talented Garrett Wilson. However, the Texans getting another vertical threat is going to be huge, opens up things potentially in the run game as well, because you're just dotting people deep. Chris Olave, big time pickup for the Texans.
Olave can definitely be touted as a touchdown machine. I think it's going to be huge for Houston, a team that really struggled to move the ball last season. They get a really solid tackle, and then they also go back and get one of the best wide receivers in the class. This offense has taken massive steps forward through this mock draft. We'll see how they can complement it in days 2 and 3, but I think this is a really good start for them in day 1. Number 14, we've got the Baltimore Ravens, and you're going with Trent McDuffie, a player who has been really low on our board at certain points, or he's been fairly high on our board at certain points. You have him all the way up to 14 here now for Baltimore. I think he's a really tough prospect to evaluate because the tape and everything about him says, wow, this guy's really good. But then the physical projectable upside maybe doesn't look as good. How much does that come into play here when you're making these mock drafts?
Yeah, it's very tough because when you look at the physicals, I'm not as excited. However, when you actually just watch the physical tape, he's a good football player. And what does Baltimore do? They just take good football players. And that's exactly the case here. Trent McDuffie, phenomenal corner at the collegiate level. It's sometimes hard to make projections. You get excited about combine, you get excited about actual measurables. But Trent McDuffie, just watching the film, he's a top tier corner in this draft, deserves to be drafted like one. So hopefully, I can continue to keep him a little higher on ours. Sometimes we've had him slip a little bit into the mid 20s, but I think he kind of deserves to be around here just with how talented he is and how great his instincts are is really kind of a deciding factor. Baltimore would be lucky to have him here at 14.
Just a quick question here, and I think some of our viewers might be interested in your thoughts on this specifically, Austin, with a player like Trent McDuffie, where we talk about his, tape is better than his physicals. If you were a GM and you're looking at, what you really want to add, how much would you take into account physicals? How much do you take into account tape? Because obviously the special top tier players are the ones who have both.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess it really depends on your coaching staff and your overall structure, what you've been able to do. A team like Baltimore can take a little more chances that have great coaching at the next level. Sometimes it's tough because you look at certain players like Josh Allen. Obviously, the production and the film just wasn't great at Wyoming. However, ended up being a top tier player. So you got to take it with a grain of salt when you're evaluating in terms of the physicals and getting excited about that. There's a lot of players with great physicals, but there's a reason why sometimes they weren't productive at the collegiate level and they weren't dominating there. So to me, it's got to be a 50-50 split.
Interesting. Moving on to 15, we got the Eagles, and Eagles fans, hit that like button, subscribe as well. Not only should you be excited about your offseason, but we here at Utility Sports are excited about your guys' offseason as well. The Hassan Reddick signing was huge. Now you have 3 picks in front of you to really make some noise in the NFC East. Washington's trying to get better with Carson Wentz and maybe looking wide receiver. Dallas, they're trying to make some moves in their own right. Austin, we are really high on Philadelphia. Why is Treylon Burks the perfect guy to get it started here at 15?
Well, you got a guy that's 6'3", athletic freak, great after the catch. He checks almost every single box as a receiver, and you're looking at Philadelphia, who needs a big physical receiver out wide. Obviously, I really like Devontae Smith. I think Treylon Burks is a perfect complement here. You can get him the ball in space, let him do his thing. And in the red zone, he's going to be a nightmare for teams to cover. So I love that for the Philadelphia Eagles, really giving Jalen Hurts another option in that wide receiver room.
I really love Treylon Burks as well. I think that this kid has a phenomenal skill set. He's going to be really good in the NFL and the perfect complement to Smith, like you had mentioned. And then 16, Eagles still here, and we're going with linebacker Devin Lloyd out of Utah, another player who before the season really wasn't on the first round pick type of radar, had a great season with the Utes, and now we see him in the middle of the first round pick 16 to Philadelphia. This is atypical of the Eagles to go linebacker. Why does Howie Roseman go with this selection, and why does he need to?
I think defensively, the Philadelphia Eagles are, they're not exactly where they want to be. The linebacker play definitely needs to improve. Devin Lloyd's going to be a phenomenal addition with how instinctual he is, really good tackler, and also is getting better in coverage, which I think that's going to come along a little bit more once he gets to the actual league. But, they need to make sure that they are very, very solid at that second level. I think there's a lot of room to improve. So that's why it's beautiful for them, because they got the 3 first-round picks. They can address those big key areas of need. And to me, I see linebacker as a huge one.
Definitely would be a huge improvement for this Eagles team. 17, we got the Chargers, and they're also targeting linebacker here. And I think this is maybe a little bit of an admission here if Tom Telesco were to make this selection, that Kenneth Murray's not the guy that he thought he would be in the NFL. Nakobe Dean, on the other hand, he is kind of where the modern day NFL linebacker is supposed to be, right? When it comes to his speed, ball hawking capability, gets all over the field. Why is Nakobe Dean such a dream fit here for the Chargers?
I love this because the Chargers play fast defensively. You look all the way to the safety spot. You look at the edges that they have. Once again, this is a very quick defense. Nakobe Dean just adds another element to that. He is so fast in short area quickness. Very, very good at picking the holes in the run game. So I think this is an ideal scenario. I know we have been consistently selecting interior defensive linemen. They were able to address that in free agency. So now I kind of took a step back and looked at it as, okay, maybe they feel pretty comfortable with what they've done on the interior. Now I look at the linebacking unit. That's a place that they can improve.
Definitely would be a massive improvement for this Chargers team. Moving on to 18, we got the Saints. And wow, we've got a big switch up here. This is where we kind of been looking at Matt Corral territory. But now you see Desmond Ridder putting his stake into the first round. The former Cincinnati Bearcat, never lost at home for Cincinnati, has been a phenomenal mainstay quarterback for them. And they saw a lot of production this year from him as well, as they won a ton of games. Do you think Desmond Ridder is not only deserving of this selection, but is going to make the Saints really relevant again?
Yeah, I think part of this has to do with the idea that they can run a lot of read option. He's a dual threat quarterback. And I look at the New Orleans Saints. I mean, they can be explosive offensively still. You have Alvin Kamara, you have Michael Thomas in place. But looking at them, I think they're going to be considering, long-term behind Jameis Winston. I know he had signed the two-year deal. We're not exactly sure if he's going to play out the duration of that. So who knows? There's a lot that could happen. Maybe they opt to go with the tackle. But I think long-term, Desmond Ridder's a fun project. He's a guy that you can really trust. Long-term, giving him a year or two would be super beneficial for this New Orleans Saints team. It all depends on how Jameis Winston looks. That's a big reason for this, because if he doesn't look like that same quarterback that they thought he could be, then I think they're going to be back to the drawing board.
It definitely does open them up to a development project here. And like you said, you do have the stability of Jameis Winston in front of him right now, where you don't have to rush him into the fold. Number 19, we've got the Eagles yet again, and Tyler Linderbaum's the selection here. And I know Eagles fans might be a little curious why you go with the center from Iowa, even with Jason Kelce staying around in town there in Philadelphia. Is it just because Tyler Linderbaum's a good football player?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, we have a center. We have Kelce for one more year. Yes, you do. Yes, you do, guys. I'd like to look at him as a guard for now. When Kelce retires, he's going to slot right into that center spot, and he's going to be terrific there. He's been great his entire career at Iowa, and I think that doesn't change at the NFL level. Very well could be a Pro Bowler in year 1 or 2. That's the type of football player he is. Positional value is what made him drop in the draft, and I think Eagles fans should be actually super pumped about pick 19.
This is phenomenal additions across the board here for Philly. Way better defensively now with these signings. You also had a really good interior offensive lineman, added a star wide receiver. I mean, the Eagles get really, really scary with this rendition of your mock draft. Austin, 20, Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going with Trevor Penning from UNI. Break down this kid. I know you really, really like him. There's a viral video on him going around on TikTok as well.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Penning's just fun to watch. And when you looked at all the one-on-one individual workouts, he dominated pretty much every drill there. I know a lot of people had questions about his level of competition at UNI. But at the end of the day, he's just a good football player. He's nasty, he's ferocious, fits the identity of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that's what they need, a little bit more toughness along that offensive line. That's something they've been lacking the last couple of seasons. Trevor Penning is going to be a huge building block for this team.
Yeah, for anyone with questions about the competition or, his toughness, I mean, watching those one-on-ones in pro days, not only was he manhandling guys, throwing them to the ground, but then you give them a little bit extra after the play, whether that's talking crap or also just getting down in their face a little bit, maybe giving them an extra push while they're on the ground. He's nasty, and I think Pittsburgh gets way better with this selection. 21 now, we move on to the New England Patriots, and Travon Walker here from Georgia. Obviously, an edge that's really ascended the board this year. Didn't really see him as a first-round guy at the very beginning of the season, but has really made himself a mainstay here now into the first round. Talk about this Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. He's going to be a mainstay in this first round. You guys are going to be seeing him a lot because when you look at his actual physicals, he's a phenomenal player to watch. You know, granted, didn't have the biggest level of production. However, I think at the next level with some coaching, he's going to be a nightmare. And what does New England like to do? They like to take guys that are projects that have big projectable ceilings. That is what Travon Walker brings to the table. Very possible he continues to work himself up the boards because of those physicals. And when it comes to NFL draft time, that's what happens. Guys that are elite physically tend to rise. And it's tough for the guy, you know, the tape guys, as you like to call them. They start to fall because, you know, it's all recency bias. Even at the NFL level, at the highest level, there's a lot of recency bias, and that's why Walker's going to continue to ascend in the draft.
I'd be interested to see how an NFL draft combine before the final college season for certain players would work out, because you'd have these guys running their combine, and then all of a sudden, you know, the tape might be really good, but scouts will say, yeah, but he ran a 4.51 at corner, so I'm not really sure if I'm interested in taking him as he has a, you know, a phenomenal play. But Travon Walker, like you said, really phenomenal player here. Good assets physically, and I think he's going to fit really well in New England. 22, we got the Green Bay Packers, and Packers fans, you finally get the wide receiver you've been dying for in round one. That's Drake London out of USC. There's question marks about this kid from some of the viewers here on the channel. Why should those be put to rest?
High volume guy, and we saw him at the college level be able to consistently be targeted, really good catch percentage. And I think when you look at Drake London, you know, his frame is really key here, because there's not a lot of receivers in this draft that are as big as him and as consistent as him. We've seen in years past, some of these bigger 6'4 guys, 6'5 guys, they go into the draft with very little production at the college level because they just weren't the high volume players. Drake London is the complete opposite. We've seen him consistently targeted 10 plus times in multiple games. Didn't really matter the quarterback, whether it was Keaton Slovis or whoever. I think that when you look at Drake London, this is a guy that you can trust as a volume guy, and that's what you're going to need to replace Davante Adams.
Right, one volume guy goes out to Las Vegas, a new volume guy comes in from SoCal, and you see the Packers getting way better here with this selection. 23, Arizona Cardinals, and you're keeping it simple here. Cornerback Andrew Booth Jr., one that we've been looking at for a long time here on the channel. We've been going back and forth between him and Tyler Linderbaum for a lot of these mocks. Obviously, with Linderbaum off the board here, does it make it pretty obvious that Booth Jr. is the fit?
Yeah, absolutely. They're looking for a physical corner in Arizona. I definitely was considering at this spot, you know, maybe they're looking for an edge with the absence of Chandler Jones, but corner is as big of a need equally as the edge spot. I definitely think they're going to consider edge later on, but Andrew Booth Jr., seamless transition into this Cardinals defense. He's going to be a really terrific man guy at the next level. They get a good one here.
Definitely like that fit for Arizona. And then 24 here, a player who slides a little bit, and I think Cowboys fans really happy to see him available for them. This is the perfect Lyle Collins replacement here with Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. Really good pass protector. Why'd you have him slide in this one? And then should Cowboys fans be really happy about this one and maybe even buying Charles Cross jerseys?
Yeah, Charles Cross, phenomenal prospect. I think a little bit of reason for the slide was just the ascension of Trevor Penning. You know, he's been a guy that's been highlighting it, and you're trying to go off of what you've been hearing. I think Charles Cross should necessarily go this low? No, but this is a prediction based off of what I've been hearing. And I think Charles Cross to Dallas is huge. Obviously, they have the money savings from Lyle Collins. You slot in a rookie tackle, and you get to have him for 5 years on a really, really good contract. That's exactly what Dallas is going to need with all these high-price offensive players they're currently paying.
Huge addition here for the Dallas Cowboys. Got to protect Dak Prescott. Also got to help your running backs in the running game. And I think Charles Cross can help in both areas. 25, we got the Buffalo Bills. We're going with cornerback Kaiir Elam out of Florida, a player who earlier in the process we had thought maybe could go top 15. Have him sliding to 25 here, but Buffalo, I think, badly needs a cornerback. Are you high on Buffalo's chances to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this next season?
And this pick is a direct reflection of, you know, what I think they have to do in order to beat the top tier AFC teams. Obviously, it's a passing league at this point, and you know, the Buffalo Bills getting Tre'Davious White's huge, and then Kaiir Elam being, you know, thrown into the fold is awesome. Big physical corner, 6'2" frame, long arms. This is exactly what you need to contend, and I think they're right there. I think you can almost consider them a potential favorite to represent the AFC. You know, this upcoming season. However, I think they definitely need some work in that corner room, and I think Kaiir Elam is a perfect fit for them.
specifically considering what you have in that division now. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and the Dolphins. You need guys who can match up with them as well if you're trying to win that division. I think the Buffaloes probably do get it done. Kaiir, Elam definitely helps. Also interesting here, I didn't mention the Jets as a concern for the AFC East division title there, Austin. Moving on to 26, I got the Tennessee Titans here. We're going with interior offensive lineman Kenyon Green from Texas A&M. Break it down for this selection here for Tennessee.
Last week it was Zion Johnson, and now Kenyon Green becomes available. I think that's the more obvious selection. Kenyon Green, physical in the run game, guy that can get out into space. Obviously, they love to run sweeps as well in Tennessee. I think it's just a tremendous fit. They've been trying to build a consistent and good offensive line for quite some time now. Adding Kenyon Green into the fold is huge. I think this team is definitely progressing in the right direction. Should be the favorites to win the AFC South, and I think Kenyon Green really helps that.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well. Good addition here for Tennessee. You help your run game, and it keeps your identity and your culture going in the right direction. 27, Zion Johnson doesn't fall far, moves down one pick from where we had him last week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is this in direct correlation to losing Alex Kappa?
Yeah, and you don't have Ali Marpet anymore, so that's going to be a tough thing to fill in the draft. Obviously, you're going to have to be very focused along that offensive line. No Marpet, no Kappa leads to a Zion Johnson selection. We hadn't really been focused along that interior offensive line during our mock drafts, but that's, once again, why you got to be subscribed. So much has changed from then to now. Zion Johnson definitely going to be the pick, I think, if this is the scenario that plays out.
Right, they brought in Shaq Mason from the Patriots. Now they go in and get another guard here in Zion Johnson. Their interior offensive line is seemingly solved after this selection. 28, we've got the Green Bay Packers here and Jameson Williams. So we're going two wide receivers here for Green Bay, Drake London and now Jameson Williams, who maybe there's a little bit of delay in how early he can be active for Green Bay. Why is this a must happen for the Packers?
Because it is the window for Aaron Rodgers to finally win a Super Bowl. You have to have some receivers for him. I don't think you can skimp. I think that two wide receiver picks is not completely out of the question. There's going to be some people saying there's no way that they do it. And then there's other people that are going to agree. I think you have to have some weapons for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones is a terrific running back, but at the wide receiver room, definitely needs a lot of work, especially with the last, couple of transactions they've made or haven't made. And that's why Jameson Williams, a guy who is a potential, top 15 player in the class, slides to you. No brainer to me.
Right, and the Packers here do have more draft flexibility than most teams. That Devontae Adams trade did kind of free them up a little bit. They have 2 second-round picks, multiple picks on day 3 as well. They have a lot of ways to improve this roster, so they do have the flexibility to go 2 wide receivers in round 1. Packers fans, if you're new to the channel, go check out our Green Bay Packers mock draft that we recorded about a week ago. That was recorded right after the Devontae Adams trade, so I think it's a pretty interesting one to go check out after this video. 29, we're now at the Kansas City Chiefs, and Washington cornerback 2 makes the board. Kyler Gordon here, he ran a 4.52 40. I know that kind of raised some flags for some teams, but again, this is where you get to the discussion of tape versus physicals. Why is Kyler Gordon worth a first-round pick?
It's incredible that him and McDuffie played on the same team, and I look at Kyler Gordon, a nice man-to-man guy. They ran quite a bit of man at Washington, and now you look at Kansas City, a team that's definitely deprived at that corner spot. Losing Ward, you've talked about it in a lot of our videos. Huge loss for them. You got to come back and patch that up. Once again, you're in the AFC. You look at some of these AFC contenders like Buffalo, Kansas City, and then the Bengals a little later on. You got to have some solid corner play. Kyler Gordon can provide that for you.
Especially in that division now. You look at the AFC West. I mean, you're going to have to deal with Jerry Jeudy, who I think is primed for a breakout year with the Broncos. Devontae Adams now in Vegas. You still have to deal with Hunter Renfrow as well. And then you look at, the Chargers, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. Those 2 aren't going anywhere either. So cornerback play is essential. Chiefs need to find one with one of their first 2 picks in the draft. Of course, the second pick is right here, Jahan Dotson from Penn State. So you have the replacement here for Tyreek Hill. Jahan Dotson, a little bit of a different player, though. Break down what his strengths and assets are.
Yeah, definitely a guy that has a good feel for the sideline. He's made a lot of acrobatic catches over there. You're going to see him run a lot of short to intermediate routes. He's not going to burn a ton of guys deep. However, he works really, really good in terms of, working the middle of the field. That's something big for them. Obviously, Tyreek Hill was phenomenal at that too, working that middle of the field, getting a good feel for the zone. That's what Jahan Dotson brings to the table. So obviously, it's not a seamless transition. It won't be when you're trying to replace one of the best receivers of this entire generation. However, you have to do it. I don't feel super comfortable running into the season with what they have at receiver. So I think they're going to address it with one of the picks in the first round.
Definitely love this here. Jahan Dotson, really good addition here from Penn State. And then 31, Martin Emerson here from Mississippi State. I know the jury's maybe still out on him for some of our viewers, but Cincinnati, you have him going cornerback. They obviously brought Eli Apple back on a short-term deal. Is cornerback the biggest need now for Cincinnati after patching up that offensive line?
Well, we've been consistently going with that offensive line. I feel a little better after what they've been able to do with Lyle Collins and Alex Kappa. That was a big deal for me. Therefore, I was able to kind of look at some of the other areas of concern for me. I think corner is still a little bit of a concern, especially when you're playing up against the premier passing teams of the AFC. Martin Emerson steps in. And you're going to see, especially at the back half here, a lot of man-to-man guys are going off the board, guys that can cover one-on-one, guys that can generate turnovers. And I'm looking at this team, and they need another corner in that secondary, I think Martin Emerson kind of fits the bill here.
Love that there for Cincinnati. We'll see if they can make it back to the Super Bowl this next season. And then 32 here, the Detroit Lions, a team we kind of talked about in the open a little bit, saying how good of a future they have here. Even though they went with Lee McNeil and Levi Onwuzurike last year, I think this is an example of best player available, too good of a talent to pass up at the end of round one. Is that the case here with Jordan Davis?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, selecting those two guys last year, that was kind of the plan. But I think when you look at what Jordan Davis can bring to the table for that front seven, man, that's scary. It really is scary. Sometimes when you make selections, you have to be willing to, one of those guys is going to have to take a back seat, essentially. It's always great for rotation, too, because Jordan Davis is not guaranteed to be a 3-down defensive lineman at the next level. That's why having a good, consistent rotation, having those guys fresh, it's really deadly, honestly, when we've seen teams like Philadelphia and Minnesota over the last couple of years have a nice, steady rotation along that defensive line. It really bodes well towards the end of games.
It definitely does. The Lions looking way better here. They had Aidan Hutchinson and also Jordan Davis in one draft. That front seven goes from questionable to really, really good quickly. So I love that for Detroit. Again, hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe as well if you're new. Check out the other videos on the channel. We'll have some cards in this video for you to check out. Also, click one of these videos here on the end screen. Give it a chance. Let's see what you think. Leave a comment as well on your thoughts. And we'll catch you guys in the very next Utility Sports video.